Have you ever wondered why some real estate agents perform at ultra-high levels every single year? Welcome to the Unstoppable Agent Podcast with your host, Richard Fournier. Each week, we interview real estate agents from around the world who are constantly ranked in the top 1% of the real estate industry. My mission, share with you their best strategies so that you can create your own peak results as a real estate agent. It's time to become unstoppable.
Well, hello and welcome back to this episode of the Unstoppable Agent Podcast. Of course, I'm your host, Rich Fournier, and I'm going to say something really interesting right now. I'm excited. We got a rock star from Calgary, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat, Alberta, and probably doesn't want me to say that, but the organizational structure, the volume, the amount of people this guy is serving with his team is extraordinary, and we're really excited to have you here today. Thank you,
Thanks,
sir.
Rich, thank you so much. I'm a huge fan of you, what you're doing, the way that you serve, and it's a great honor for me to be here with you and your fans today, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very, very much. You know, this podcast is about trying to delve deep into leadership, into an agent who's performing at an extremely high level. Why are they performing that way, and what has caused them? Like, what was their motive, their driving force that inspired them to start this journey? So thank you for taking the time. And currently today you're in Calgary. You live in Lethbridge, but you're in 3 markets for our international audience. Mm-hmm. And you have a team of how many, Courtney?
We're 45 agents, 2 new people starting next week. So yeah, we'll be probably, 50 by the end of the year, likely.
It's a big organization. And when you look at the game of real estate, which is trying to serve people at the highest level possible. And when you look back over these years, what drove you to get started in this business?
Fear.
Right.
Yeah. I think for a lot of people, it comes down to that. I was a senior manager at a university in human resources. And one day my boss walked into my office and said to me, hey, Courtney, I'm getting some negative feedback about your work, and I'm not sure that I'm going to be able to keep you around too much longer, at which time I immediately broke down into tears and felt my life flash before me, began really worrying about what it was that I would be doing for the rest of my life. And then eventually at the end of that day came to the place where I just didn't want to be subject to that sort of environment anymore. The truth was that I really wasn't a bad employee. I don't know that I was a great employee, but certainly wasn't a bad employee. And I'm not certain based on this person's particular track record that there was indeed any bad feedback at all. I just didn't want to be around an environment like that. And the truth was, Rich, when I looked around that place, I didn't see anybody living the life that I wanted. I didn't see anybody as happy as I wanted to be or as fulfilled as I wanted to be. And as I looked up that corporate ladder, I didn't see any of those people either. And so that moment wasn't really a bad thing retrospectively. It was horrifying in the moment, but that's really what propelled me to want to look at some career change. And for me, I just needed to be able to hit a high income level within a very short period of time without a bunch more education. I'd already been to school for ages and ages before that. And I just didn't have the time. I had a very short runway to net $5,000 a month, which was what my monthly burn rate was back 14 years ago. And I looked at insurance, investments, and real estate. And I interviewed people in all those fields, and the realtors seemed the happiest. They were driving the nicest cars, living in the nicest neighborhoods. And that's really what it was for me. I was scared to death that I was going to go broke. I thought I'd get fired if I stayed at this one place. And hey, man, real estate looked like a good place to be. And so, like anyone who's, got a big nut to crack, like I did, I read 25 books. I went out and found, I guess the only books that I could find on real estate 14 years ago, one of which was MREA, of course, yep, and 24 others. And that book just spoke to me. I read it over 3 or 4 or 5 times before I even got my license and thought, man, there's a lot of logic in this. I mean, I can see how a person can scale a business. And I didn't see anybody in my market, Lethbridge, Alberta, that had done anything like that. And I thought, well, why not me? And there were a handful of very small teams, 1 or 2 agents at that time. And I just thought, okay, I think I'm going to try to build something like that. And, just went about failing forward. Rich, I don't want to tell you that I haven't screwed a bunch of stuff up. I mean, I screw things up every day. It's 9 o'clock or whatever, 9:30 in the morning. I've already screwed things up here today already. And I think that's just been the key, is not sweating that stuff and just keeping going, honestly.
100%. I concur. When you look at when you started, there is like there has to be some kind of like, so there's the burn rate and there's the nut to crack, which was your $5,000. But if you don't mind me asking, what gave you the confidence? Like, where did that confidence come from? Was it given to you? Was it developed over time? To be able to go into a business that, you know, transactions are farther and fewer between, right? There's a lot of competition, maybe not at the time, or maybe there was. So where did that confidence come from?
I don't want to tell you that there was any confidence, Rich. If you investigate and speak to the people that are in my inner circle, they'll tell you that I'm not that confident, you know, kind of generally as a person. And in real estate, I have competence and I have confidence now, but that's taken many, many years.
Got it.
Tens of thousands of hours of practice and millions of dollars burned on things that didn't work, right?
Sure.
But you know, in those days, it really came down to this. It really did come to fear. It wasn't confidence. I was scared that I was going to get fired here. Yeah. And I needed something with very low barriers to entry that I thought people could do. And this is going to sound crass, but the truth was, when I looked around the industry, I didn't see anybody that was like dramatically harder working than me. I didn't see anybody that was like dramatically smarter than me. And I didn't see anybody that like didn't look or sound at least a little bit like me. It wasn't like, you know, I was looking at, you know, becoming an investment banker and those people were very different, or becoming a doctor and those people were very different. I mean, I saw similarities between who I was at that time in my 34th year and what I was becoming. So that similarity, I think, kind of helped me bridge the gap of fear. Yeah. And then in terms of how I kept with it and what I stuck to and how I kind of gained even just a hair of confidence, I can very specifically remember one evening, in fact, having a beer at a friend's place, and this very successful entrepreneur in town, dear friend of mine now, named Mike Marcotte, great entrepreneur and restaurateur, and one of the few people that's made it and scaled it and done exceedingly well, and now is retired really young from it. I just floated the idea by him, the very first person that I said that I was thinking about getting into real estate. And he looked at me square in the eyes and he said, "Oh man, you're going to be awesome at that. I can't wait to see all you do." And in that moment, that was all I needed, just that one person. Right. And so for people that are thinking about getting into real estate, I tell that story. I've told it 100 times, if not more. But I say, just like, keep this information close and share it with like people that you know are going to champion you. Because if I spoke to the wrong person, there's a decent chance that I might not be here. You know, I could have gone into insurance or somewhere else, right?
They put their fears on you, right?
Yeah, man.
Next thing you know, you're out. Oh, I can't do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And you have to speak to those people that you know have done it, who have taken these chances and found that one person that believed in them and kept on betting in them. And so not that I was conscious about it, Rich, but I think subconsciously I knew that he was a safe place to speak to about that, because he's always been super optimistic and positive and encouraging. Like, that's his character and always has been. Plus, he was winning at a business that most people don't win at. And I thought, okay, I'm going to talk to this guy about it and just see what he says. Like, just, you know, inadvertent sounding board. Yeah.
Right.
So a little bit of confidence came from there for sure.
Yeah. You know, it was one of my mentors that said, "Rich, borrow my belief in you."
Yeah, of course.
Right. Borrow my belief to make the thing happen, because I believe in you. 100%. You may not be able to see the thing, but I can see it for you. And if you have an inkling, if you have this desire, you have the ability to. Right.
And dude, I'll tell you, and not that you've asked, but it's an important kind of segue to what's next. You know, it's finding these people that believe in you, that see more in you. And the truth in my journey, brother, was that I was in a primary relationship where I didn't have as much of that as I needed. Like I told you, I don't have a lot of confidence in a lot of areas of my life, and I've worked hard to gain what confidence that I do have. But when I came home at the end of the day, when I was first getting into real estate, I was faced with a barrage of questions like, how's this deal going? Are you going to have enough money in the bank at the end of the month? Like, what's, you know, did this person close or that person close? And it was just like this constant, like, you know, negative assumption that things weren't going to be good because I was at the helm of it all. Right. And the truth is that after about 2 years in real estate, you know, I came to bed one night and said, "Hey, listen, you know,
can't do this.
Like, this isn't working. Now, I'm not trying to say that she's a bad person. That's not the case at all, but just the wrong person for somebody that was already struggling with this belief in self and that knew what that person would look like that could help me see more of that. And I'm super fortunate now, Rich. I've spent the last little bit more than a decade with my wife, Melanie, who, despite what she probably should believe, no matter what, champions what I'm trying to become and who I am today. And doesn't need all the stuff that we have. We're fortunate to have, of course, but she's not invested in it, and it's not like part of our identity. And so that's just a really freeing but encouraging thing that does inspire a lot of confidence in a guy like me, especially.
Oh, yeah, 100%. I have a spouse who, without her, there is no way I could have ever done anything we've ever done, failed miserably, lost everything, rebuilt. It requires someone who genuinely has your best interest at heart and wants to see you win, but doesn't need it. Right. I agree. When you look back at the confidence that you said, you had some relatively parts of you that were insecure, maybe the self-image wasn't like strong. And were there tactics or strategies that you could share with our audience? Because I know that our audience, there's someone in here right now who is struggling emotionally with confidence or struggling with certainty around what they're doing. Was there something that you did to help create more certainty or confidence in what you do and who you are?
Yeah, 100%. Very early on, and by the way, there's cautionary note here. So asterisks, some of this you don't want to do. There's kind of like two versions of this story, phase 1 and phase 2, I'll call it. Yeah. Phase 1 looked like this. I come from a background of education. I worked in education. My parents were educated. I went through a lot of university. And so my go-to was always to study and to learn, to research, and then be able to articulate. And so I needed the income. So there's no question. I was doing my dials, sending the messages. I mean, I was working like 100 hours a week pretty regularly during that time. Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, out of fear, lack of certainty, lack of confidence. But a big chunk of that was also getting out there, doing the research, learning what to say, how to say it, to whom, at what times, learning new closing strategies, learning strategies to be more efficient with my time so that I could do more in less time, learning how to scale. And so I really just at a very early stage became a student of the business, Rich. And I think, when you become a student of something, it becomes a little bit easier to gain some confidence, because before too long, if you really are studying super hard, it doesn't take a long time to kind of level up against the average. And at that point in time, really, like if I was average, I'd have been fine, but I was trying to be exceptional and I didn't have the confidence to get there. But again, like I borrowed that confidence from a friend and from another relationship that I was fortunate enough to find myself in with my wife, Melanie. I began to borrow the confidence that people saw in me by virtue of the experience that I could create, the information that I could share, and the ability that I had to create a very simple process of something that was otherwise very complex. And that was by virtue of my studying and being a student of the business. Now, the challenge with that was that because I was also lacking confidence, was that I also built a tremendous ego, because don't forget, like I was really scared this whole time, right? I was building myself up with information and experiences. But one of the masks that I wore at that time, and I would say probably for the first 7 or 8 years in business, was one of ego. And so I had to win, in my negotiations, I was a real son of a bitch to deal with and, really, really aggressive. And, a lot of my marketing reflected that. It was great. Like it was attracting a lot of business, but it wasn't doing a great job at positioning me as being a friendly colleague to other folks in the industry. And so a lot of my negotiations and a lot of my deals were very clunky with other agents. And the funny thing that was happening around that same time was that I built a smaller team. I'd had 5 or 6 agents on the team at that point, but we weren't profitable. There was a lot of entitlement. None of those people really cared about me, loved me, or wanted the best for me. And I looked around one day and was like, man, like I got payroll coming up here in a week's time. I got $3,600 in the bank and I'm shy about 10 more. And so I literally, this is about 6 years ago, I had to go to my mother-in-law, borrow $10,000 to make payroll, have a real good look in the mirror and say, hey man, like what's going on here that this is happening? Like everybody in the community thinks you're like this top dog. By our numbers, we were certainly the top producing team. My colleagues hated me appropriately, but because of my success or the perceived success that I had. But inside, like I was broken and not profitable. And these people on my team really didn't love or care for me. And so I went through that process of like, understanding, first of all, that I was the common denominator in all these problems that I was having, and that I had taught all these people how to teach me with my big ego, and that I really had to go through this process of unpacking some of that and showing up a lot differently so that I could affect different outcomes in my business and in my life. And really come to grips with the fact that I was trying to control every single variable. I was trying to control the way people perceived me. I was trying to control every transaction. And in that control, nobody really felt the love that they should have felt, given what they had contributed to my personal life. And so once I stepped into this role of just loving people and kind of like letting go of outcomes and being a little bit divested of the pathway to success, things really started unfolding for me. And you can see I wear this shirt daily now. If you watch my videos or my social media, this is my uniform. I wear it with love, and I try to bring that everywhere I go. I want people to know that I'm a safe space, that I don't carry that ego with me, that I'm pretty humble in the way that I approach most parts of my life. And if I can just spread a little bit more joy, make things a little bit more easy for people around me, we're all going to get what we want. And for me, ultimately, I want to feel safe. I want to feel happy. I want to feel at peace. I want to feel in flow. I want to do work that's meaningful to me. Right. And yeah, listen, I want a nice house and all these things too, but those things have come to me much more readily, much more quickly since I stopped thinking about them so much, and since I stopped squeezing them so much, holding them so dear. What I hold dear now are the relationships, the time, the energy, the joy that I take to work every day. And that's just been so much more fun. Like that's been the last 6 years, and I've been having the time of my life with that.
It's a heck of a story. So when you look at, it's a heck of a life. And when you look at that shift that you made, so I resonate with that. I mean, there were times where I had to call my in-laws and say, my father-in-law made me write a demand note, right? Made me sign a demand note. I need help.
Yeah,
right? I messed up. And humbling, never want to go back there again. And who do I have to be to get to that point? Like, who do I have to be now? Because I'm the only common denominator in all of this crap, good and bad.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Was there a process, Courtney, that you went through to say, you know what, this is where I'm at. I need to change me. And would you be open to sharing a little bit about that process internally or that strategy for people?
Yeah, for sure, man. Thanks for asking, first and foremost. And yeah, it was a brutal time, and it was really challenging. And I think for our listeners, one of the things that you might be asking is like, well, hey, Court, like it's one thing to change yourself, your perspective and your outlook, but your business was busted and broke. Like, how did you navigate the way through the deal so that you could like become profitable? And so it was almost like living this double life. Like on the one hand, these people had come to expect certain things from me. They expect me to be a certain way. And I knew that thing wasn't working anymore. And I knew that if I was going to get different people in my life that were going to treat me differently, I'd have to be a different person, a person who was attractive to those people. And these two things did not align. And so that was a real change management strategy in terms of like my personal philosophies and the way that I was showing up in the world. And you're right, that was scary because I couldn't afford to lose these realtors. Like they were helping me pay the bills. If they left, I was going to be bankrupt, right? And so there was this journey of kind of bringing them along as much as I could while bringing in more people to my organization so that as these folks inevitably were dropping off, we would have the revenue to replace whatever business they weren't doing. And so, yeah, that was a very intentional process. And I don't want to say that I had the answers. That's the challenge about going through personal growth is that, you can read and hear that it's the right thing, but it takes way more time than you would like for you to see the results, whether it's economic or personal or emotional or physical. And the truth is that the folks that are in your life at this particular time, they might not like this future version of you. So you have to be prepared for a letting go. And that was something that I wasn't quite prepared for, admittedly. Like there was a bunch of people, friends, and other folks in my life that just weren't going to like this new version of me. And I'd have to be like comfortable letting go of those. And the challenging part about that whole thing is that your ego wants to cling to things and be recognized and everybody think that you're awesome. And you can construct that to a certain degree. But when you go through this releasing process, you have to shed a lot of the fruits of that, which is the celebration, the stage, and all that kind of stuff. So specifically how I did that, naturally through some reading. I mean, most everything's been done before, building a team's been done before. Most of what I've done to build my team has been ripped off and deployed in my markets with some special twist, but not particularly unique. And the same thing went for my personal development. I recognized that a lot of people started getting up earlier in the morning. So I did that and finally settled on about 4 o'clock. Which is where I get up now. Eventually landed on the fact that I needed to be hydrated in the morning. So I landed on a green juice cocktail that I've been drinking now for 5 years. Went through a gratitude practice, an affirmation practice, a goal setting practice, a visioning practice. And if I have time, sometimes a meditation practice in there as well. These days I throw in a sauna in there in the morning, go do some cardio, stretch, go to the gym, come back, and I'm at my house by usually 7:30 to spend the morning with my kids. And by that time, I really feel like I've got my day beat. I really feel like I've got the best parts of my day already in. I listen to an audiobook typically while I'm at the gym, unless it's like a really hard workout, but usually I will. And so I get some knowledge on the go, while I'm getting my morning happening. And so nothing can really get you down when you've had a morning like that, is what I found. And I get to my day and I'm like, man, like literally nothing could happen to me now that's going to bring me down, because I've just lived this like 10 out of 10 life for the last 3.5 hours. And it was solely for Courtney.
That's right.
It's like wickedly selfish. But here's the beauty of that early morning, is that nobody in the world needs me. My kids don't need me. My wife doesn't need me. My business doesn't need me, but Courtney needs me. Yep. And I'm going to show up for Courtney and be the best version of him that I can be, so that when I start seeing people at 9 o'clock, then I can be 10 out of 10 me, and awesome and selfless and caring and invested and awake and energized and enthused, because I've gotten the sleep, because I've gotten the energy, because I've got the focus, and I know where I need to be, and I'm happy and I'm grateful, and I can see opportunity, and I'm prepared to bring other people along for that journey. And so, that's how it started. But it was probably a year before I started feeling any of that. You know what I mean? Like, I was just like, I'm committing to this. Like, everybody says it works. And I'm like, please, like, when's the money showing up? Like, who's got the money? Right.
Listen, I had to change everything around me. Like, I had to watch what I drank, back to the gym, stretching, working out, eating better, no carbs, like changing my mind, reading, studying. And of course, you're like, is it going to show up? And then you're operating in faith in that moment.
It's true. Yeah.
So when you operate in that faith, why, like, did you have doubt? Did you almost walk away from that? Like, how did that play out?
Yeah. I mean, I think if you say that you didn't have doubt, or that you didn't have fear or worry that it wasn't going to happen for you, then I think you'd be lying. But one of the things that I did learn during that time, Rich, was that I was really focused on the wrong stuff. Like, I was focused on the things, I was focused on the goals, I was focused on me, I was focused on being seen, right? Like, that's the ego showing up in all these places, right? And what I settled on during that time was that, I'd rather be broke than and happy, broke and fulfilled, broke and satisfied, broke and at peace, broke and seeing and feeling love wherever I went, than had what I had before with more money and bigger stuff. Like, it really just didn't feel enriching. I was so busy that I don't suppose that I really kind of like really felt it too much. But when it all started crashing down, I'm like, I had to pay attention. And so going through this shift, that's really what got me there. It wasn't that I started seeing these immediate hits of awesomeness. It wasn't like, hey, great, I all of a sudden, instead of drinking with my friends until 4 o'clock in the morning on Saturday nights, that I all of a sudden love getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and doing all this healthy stuff. No, man, like, it was painful. I didn't like it. It's not my style. Like, that's not the way I grew up. Like, right. I was the guy that shut down every party for decades. Like, that's who I am, or who I was, I should say. And so through that period of time, I settled on how it made me feel. It made me feel good. I had better energy. I was more optimistic. I was more enthusiastic. And no, I didn't see the immediate results. But I had this sense that if I could stick with that, people would see something in me and they would want to be around me. And together we could do better things than what I was doing before with these other folks. And that's exactly what happened.
Prior to this recording, Courtney, I had an agent ask me a question. He goes, Rich, what is the strategy to dominate the market? And he should listen to this podcast.
It's funny, man, because I do the same thing. Like, my social media is filled with this stuff, and my coaching clients ask me the same thing. And, oftentimes, I'll give you an example. I have a wonderful couple that I coach. They're amazing people. And when we first started working together, one of my first questions to them was, hey, so just honestly, like, how much do you drink? And I could tell that they were like a little bit irritated as their coach that I would bother asking such basic questions. Yeah. But as we started unpacking it, there was a fair degree of alcohol being consumed. And listen, I love alcohol too. I had some on the weekend. I don't judge people that drink. But the fact is when you're going through dramatic changes in your life and you're trying to find more energy and more enthusiasm and more optimism to be a different person, to bring other people along for this ride, that's one of the easiest things to let go of, right? I mean, I shouldn't say easy, but one of the
Some
most
people,
important.
it's hard,
It's
right? Because those
hard,
dopamine levels are really fun.
right? And if you're ADHD like I was, and I was undiagnosed during those times, like, that was my hit. That was one of the things that I did. I mean, I drank for years and years and heavily, right?
Made you feel normal.
To a degree, yeah, except for the following days where you
Right,
felt
sure.
horrible
Then
and
you
your energy
crash,
was.
but
Yeah, but I love what you're saying, and your clients are well served by those questions, Rich, because people need to know that our health, our mindset, where we are in our alignment is how we show up in the world. And you said something before that I really appreciated. You talked about, your way of being the greatest influencer or affector of your future, of your goals, of your change. And I'm like, yeah, man, we got to talk about our state of being before we can worry about the widgets. Like, listen, go onto YouTube and Google top 10 things to do as a realtor to make money. Like, your answers are already there. You don't need a coach for that. But what you want from somebody like me or you is to help you walk down the path and unpack the reasons why you're not doing it today, and then help you get there, right?
what I have experienced so far with spending some time with people like you, on both sides, men, women, there is a sense of certainty in being around who they are. They finally have come to the place that there's a state of knowing that if they're this person, everything works. And if they're not that person, nothing works. I met an agent in Oakville many years ago, one of the most outstanding producers I've ever met in my life. And I asked her this question. I said, I'll say her name. Her name is Rena. And I said, Rena, how do you do it? And this is like, I think 2009. She goes, Rich, I just know. It annoyed me to no freaking end. Like, I left that meeting pissed.
Right.
So it didn't answer my question.
Yeah.
But it did. Right. But I wasn't ready for the answer. Right. And so people like you seem to know, but you've gone through this personal development journey. And anyone that I know who's performed really, really well seems to have this one thing in common, is a personal development, self-reflection, change of self-image, or who they are. Like, everything about them changes. And would you say that's kind of been your secret sauce?
Number one thing, without question.
Right.
And I would say in doing so, you first of all you loosen the wheels. I can kind of imagine like myself with big ego kind of being like a machine that had kind of like clunky gears that wasn't really well oiled and kind of had a hard time progressing and making things happen. It's just really like tight and invested in like, protecting this thing, like the way I saw myself or needed to be seen. And once you can kind of oil up this mechanism of freedom and lowering your guard and stepping into service and being your true self, what you find is that everything just becomes easier. Like, you just feel more at peace. The stuff that you do is more simple. It's easier to say no to good stuff because you know that there's great stuff out there for you. And sometimes you don't have it right in front of you, but you're like, yeah, do you know what? I'm just so blessed that I just know something is going to come along and I don't have to sweat it. And I'm not invested in it happening either. And if it doesn't, then at least I'm just not stuck doing good stuff. I can be great with what I've got in my life right now. Like, it just allows us to not worry so dang much. And that was a big part of my life, was just that I was so worried about whether or not this thing would happen exactly the way that I needed it to. And once I let go of those expectations, then even more beautiful things started showing up. Now, the interesting thing that I want to highlight is that, I work with a psychologist even now. And one of the first questions that I asked him a couple of years ago was like, hey, Kelly, how can I still accomplish the goals that I have in my life? Because they're very ambitious. They're very big. And I do want to get there. But how do I do that if I completely let go of the attachment to those things? Right. And he said, Courtney, it's not that you got to let go of the goal. It's not that you don't ever want to be reminded of it, but you got to let go of the process. You got to let go of the steps. You got to let go of the journey and just step into joy and love and focusing on service along the way. In doing so, you can relieve yourself of the confines of your ego and the path will just present itself. And I thought, well, that sounds too hard to believe. But in fact, it's true. Like, as I've gotten better practiced at letting go of that stuff, those things, the way that I had anticipated I needed to do things, I've experienced hockey stick growth in my life, my business, my health, my relationships. and it just feels better. I've experienced hockey stick growth in my feelings of satisfaction in my own life. And it's not correlated to money or income or recognition or any of that stuff. It's just everything just feels better. And I hope that for all people. And it's one of the reasons why I try to show up as best I can for others so that they can experience the same thing.
Courtney, do you mind if I maybe summarize that a bit and maybe give it a different language?
Yeah, of course.
Did you forget about the how then? Like you made a decision about an outcome, or this is the thing, right, in my future, my destination, my holy grail. And then I stopped worrying about the how, and that every decision that I make is the right decision for right now. And ultimately, I know that it's going to get me to my destination. I don't stress about the how every single day. Is that similar to what you're discussing, or am I missing the mark?
No, I wouldn't say that you're missing the mark at all. And I think one of the things that I wanted to speak to in a bit more depth for some of our viewers and listeners is, it can seem a little bit confusing because at the end of the day, like, we're an EOS company, we know what our rocks are for this quarter. We have a leadership team to help us put those things in place. You might say, well, so Court, how can you believe in this philosophy of flow and letting go of the how if you believe in EOS and if you have these big objectives in your life? And I say, listen, it just means that I don't need an exact roadmap for today. And it just means that I don't have specific expectations of how everything is going to plan and lay itself out. I know what I got to deliver on in 90 days. I got a plan for how it might come together today. It might come together tomorrow. It might come together the next, maybe this week isn't the right week for me to work on that stuff or to come together, but it will. Like, I'm just 100% confident that it will. And I don't worry about the when so much. And I don't even worry about the how. I just know, hey, listen, like these things got to get looked after in some capacity. Maybe it's me, maybe it's somebody else, and it'll all just work itself out. I keep my eye on the big stuff and the smaller stuff, but the day-to-day, I don't get too invested in. I just go through with flow and energy, try to support the right people. And yeah, when it's on your mind, magically things happen for you.
That's going to be so annoying to some people.
I know, it's brutal, right? You're like, no, but I need you to tell me what to do. And I'm like, focus on your mindset, focus on your body, focus on having great energy, and then do all that stuff. Google the top 10 things to do to be successful in real estate. Like, I read 25 books. It's not like I invented this stuff. Like, you're not going to read my book and be like, oh, wow, it's all new. It's all ripped off and deployed. So I'm not going to say anything new here today that our viewers and listeners can't get off and just like go find out. Like, we do all that stuff, just more of it because we're a bigger company serving more clients.
Sure.
But find some things, go deep on them, and stay with it. The only way you can do that and see massive results is based on who you're being in those moments. And if you're being amazing and you're adding tremendous value and you truly are, really, truly are invested in caring for people, helping them on their journey of self-discovery, find a way that serves their needs best, and you can step away from the stuff that serves you. You can step out of the time frame, the timeline that serves you. It's just a different feeling. It's a different customer experience. It's something that most people haven't felt before. And it's a business that most people haven't experienced before either. And it's a very special thing. But the widgets, the stuff, the how, those tools, the details, like that's all free. That's out there.
It's all free. It's all free. I found the biggest journey of learning is the one that I take within my own self. And I need so many people to help me through that process.
Yeah, right.
And the people that are performing in at a certain level in whatever industry that they're in seems to have really dug deep into themselves and really made a decision about who they want to be and how they want to show up to the world and to themselves and to their friends and family. And from there, everything seems to flow in such a better way. And it seems to like magic appears. It's like circumstances in the world move into this direction because I made a decision to be that person. And then it almost opens up space for something to move in, which never would have moved in the first place.
True. Right? One of the greatest predictors, and I'm sure that you found this, and I'll share this with our viewers and listeners today, because, I work with a lot of clients, primarily team builders. And at a very early stage in that relationship, I can tell whether or not they're going to be able to do it or not do it. And the way that I can tell is when at the early stage of the relationship, say by the 6th or the 7th phone call, I'm starting to get to know them a little bit. I'm starting to see their limiting beliefs pop through and their language and their mindset. And I touch on that and I say, hey, what are the things that I think that we could be talking about right now that would help us lay a stronger foundation for some of these widgets and strategies and tools that we've been talking about, is to actually talk about the way that we're being, like just our state of being, so that we can do these things more effectively. Are you comfortable having a conversation about your mental health, your physical health, your spiritual health, and how you're showing up for your people while doing these things, the things that they've presumably hired me to lay out for them and build a business plan around? If the answer is yes, and they're serious about it and they'll do the work on it, I know that we're winning. Okay. In some cases, I've seen the answer be, you know what? No, let's talk about that later. Let's talk about the strategies first. I want to deliver this thing or that thing next.
Right.
I can already tell. Like, they think it's about the stuff. And I'm like, the stuff's free. It's how you do it. It's who you're being. It's how people see you. It's your energy and the way that you show up while doing all those things that affects the greatest outcomes. And if we can do that, anything is possible. If we're focused on those things, the widgets, just I need more, tell me about the next rabbit that I can chase. Hey, man, I'm like, yeah, that's free. You can find that. You don't need me for that. We're here to talk about the way that you're doing it, who you're being first, right? Really important stuff.
To our audience, which is now in a few countries and growing, I want you to really hear what Courtney's saying, because this, out of every person that I've spoken with who's producing at a really high level, this is the common denominator. Of all my successes, all my failures, and many failures, it was always me, who I was being, how I showed up to the world, what I thought, my energy that I brought to the table. And Courtney's a shining example of that. And the language that he's using, I would like you all to go back and listen to this podcast at least 10 times, because inside that 10th time, you'll show up as a different person and hear it in a different way. So Courtney, thank you for giving us your time. And I really appreciate you. And can I have you back?
I would love to come back. Absolutely.
Can I have you back?
Be a great privilege for me to come back. Of course, man. Let's just book it. You get a hold of me after this and we'll put something on the books and we can chat some more. I know that's the trouble, right? You get into this great conversation and you feel
it's like a 3-hour conversation.
Yeah, right. But nobody's got the attention span for that anymore. So we'll just do a separate one.
I really appreciate you, Courtney. I wish you all the best over the new year, and thank you for showing up and sharing with us some of the ways of being to help us improve our life.
Absolutely. And if there's a way I can be of service to you or to your viewers or listeners, please reach out. Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And you know what? It's quite easy to find Courtney. Just type in Courtney Atkinson, Alberta, and he's everywhere. Thanks again, Courtney. I really appreciate it.
Take care.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you've heard and you're interested in creating a quantum leap in your real estate business, here's what I want you to do next. Head over to www.theunstoppableagentprogram.com and book an appointment to speak with our team. We'll get on a Zoom call with you for about 30 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, what do you really want out of your life and your business? Number 2, what is not working for you today? And number 3, the exact mindset strategy you should be using to create massive change in these areas. Remember, creating massive, consistent results in your real estate business does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance to make it happen. We're helping clients all over the world create peak results in their real estate business. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to www.theunstoppableagentprogram.com. We'll chat soon.